Welcome to the Low Carb Consultant Podcast, where I speak with leading experts, trainers, and athletes in the low carb, fasting, and strength and conditioning communities to ultimately discover the best health, longevity, and nutritional advice available. Today's guest is Bronson Dant. He's not only a wonderful person, but a veteran and coach who utilizes the ketogenic diet and CrossFit training methodologies to cultivate optimal health and nutrition outcomes for himself and his clients. And we discuss everything from how he got started on his journey and some of the personal health challenges that he had to overcome to discovering the carnivore diet and CrossFit. We talk about his thoughts on fasting, the importance of protein, working around injuries, and then lastly, some of his future aspirations in regards to working with veterans. Overall, a really great conversation. Let's jump into it. All right, we are rolling. Bronson, great to have you on, man, and finally meet you.
I appreciate it, Max. Thanks for asking me to be on.
Yeah,
Am I your
absolutely.
first actual person?
You are gonna be episode number 1.
That's fantastic. All right.
Yeah. And I've been following you for a long time, so I was super thrilled to actually have you say, like, yeah, let's go ahead and get this going. I'm ready to go. So that was great of you to do. So first off, I really appreciate your time. Um, Maybe before we jump into all the fun stuff that I want to talk about, diet, exercise, like I'm excited to go there with you.
Uh-huh.
Can you maybe give the listeners who may not know who you are quite yet, just a real brief background on yourself and how you got into coaching and where you're at now?
Yeah. Oh gosh. We only have an hour, right? All of that together is a pretty long story. To summarize it, I'm 52 years old. I'll be 53 in May. I got started on this journey in my mid to late 30s. Um, ex-military. I was in the National Guard at the time, but I was ex-active duty, gotten into the corporate world, got married, had kids, did the whole thing, put on 50, 60, 70 pounds, so in my mid 30s, I was hovering around 250. Um, my daughter took a picture of me at the beach one day, and I saw it later on in that day. I was like, what is this beached whale sitting in a chair? Like, what is going on here? I had the gut, the man boobs, the whole thing. I'm like, this is embarrassing, because it didn't match the visual image I had of who I was, right? Here I am looking at this picture, and it was in direct contradiction, direct conflict with the visual image I had in my head of who I was, what I looked like, and what I represented as a man, as a father, as a person who's supposed to be able to provide and protect in my mind. And it was such a wake up call. It was that visceral, oh my God, something has to change. And the things that had to change, and I realized this later, it wasn't like an immediate awareness thing, but I realized later it was the things that had to change were either the perception I had of myself had to change where I accepted who I was at the time,
Mhm.
or I had to change who I was to match the image of who I wanted to be. And I decided to make that change. I decided something has to change. I need to do something. So I started looking at what I was eating. I started looking at what I was doing for my exercise and my fitness and things like that. And it was a process. It was it wasn't, that was my mid 30s. It wasn't until, gosh, my mid 40s that I really put it all together and started getting to and living the life that I had imagined that I wanted to live, right? It took me years to find the right combination of fitness for my life. It took me even longer to find the right combination of fitness with nutrition for my life, to where it made an impact and I could wake up in the morning and go, I am physically free. I'm physically independent. I don't have any limitations on what I can do with my life, because I've arrived at the end goal of being competent in my body, having the confidence in my body.
Mhm.
And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. That's why you're doing what you're doing. I want people to have that, that ability to say yes to anything life puts in front of them and not have to worry about what they can't do. Right. So it took me 10 years, 8 years, 10 years to get to the point where I am now, where I've been here. A couple of years ago, I've done a couple of videos on this, but a couple of years ago, I kind of woke up one day and I was like, I don't have any goals anymore.
Hmm.
Like, what am I doing with this? Right. I go to the gym because I know I need to, but it's not like I'm trying to lose weight anymore. I've lost the weight I wanted to lose. I don't have any physical limitations I'm trying to improve anymore. There's nothing that I can't do that I want to do. Like, what's my goal now? I've reached this point. Now, what do I now it's like, okay, now I have to make up goals.
Yeah,
And this is a place, it's a weird place to be, but I want people to get to this place because this is now where you are free to experiment, free to explore, free to say, what can I do that's beyond the ordinary that I never thought I could have even considered in the past?
totally.
Here I am now. I was just talking to a friend the other day, some of the changes that we talked about off camera that I'm looking to make. I've been looking at, maybe I want to get into tactical games. Maybe I want to get into doing some combination of Spartan and high rocks and CrossFit and shooting things at the same time and trying to see what that looks like, because it's something new, it's something different, and I want to see how far I can go with it. So that option is so cool to live with that I want everyone to get to that point. So that's kind of a whole bunch of different directions, but I realized along the way that there's a combination of fitness and nutrition and mindset that you need to have in order to be successful. And all three of them are required. There is no such thing in reality for quality of life. When we're talking about quality of life, we're not
Yeah,
talking about aesthetics. We're not talking about performance. We're talking about quality of life. When we're talking about quality of life, there's no such thing as any percentage of those three things being more important than the other. They are all 100% important. It's not 50% nutrition, 50% fitness. It's not 60%, of it is nutrition or in the kitchen, right? Abs
hmm
are made in the kitchen, sure. Quality of life requires all three: fitness, nutrition, and mindset. And that's kind of where my message and what I've learned along the way.
totally. And that makes sense. I mean, and first off, just going back to, you laying out your age, 52, about to be 53. You look freaking fantastic for
Thanks.
about to turn 53. Like I just turned 40 and my goal is to look like you when I get into the next decade.
I
So
appreciate it. Thanks, man.
yeah, just know that. So no, that gives me a great lay of the land. In terms of CrossFit specifically, what initially attracted you to that type of training? It sounds like to me you were, when you realized you wanted to make a change, you were doing a whole bunch of different things. Did you like all of a sudden find CrossFit and just say like, oh, what, my God, this is what I wanted to do?
Yeah,
Or what initially attracted you to that type of training?
I really don't know. There's a couple of things. So I actually joined, I can't remember the name of the program, but there was some online program that was like super popular at the time that was like a 12-week get in shape,
hmm
nutrition, fitness programming, I do it at home, whatever. And I joined that, and I remember it was super expensive. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this, whatever. I joined it, and then like 2 weeks into it, I went on a cruise for my 40th birthday.
Okay.
On the cruise, I met a guy who owned a CrossFit gym in Miami. And I met him. Here's how I met him. I was on the
hmm
elliptical
hmm
in the in
Yep.
the gym on the boat, right?
Yep.
And I looked over across the room, and there's this dude with 80-pound dumbbells doing dumbbell snatches. I'm like, what? He's throwing those things up like they're feathers. What the heck is going on here, right? And I'm watching him the whole time, and I'm like, there's no way. What is he doing? I'd never seen a dumbbell snatch before.
Yeah.
No idea what it was.
Yeah.
And so at some point I got up the gumption. I went over and talked to him. I was like, dude, what are you doing? That's crazy. And then he showed me, and then we ended up spending the week just hanging out and did a workout with him almost every day. He kicked my ass, and it was just, I was like, what is going on? What is this? So I got home from the cruise and I found a gym, went to a gym, tried it out. Guess what my first CrossFit workout was in 2011?
I'm gonna go ahead and say Fran.
Exactly. I walk in the door and they're like, hey, do you know how to do kipping pull-ups? I was like, I don't even know what the heck is a kipping pull-up. Well, you got to do a lot of pull-ups in this workout. So we kip them to make them faster so you can get them in faster time. I'm like, okay. So I learned how to do kipping pull-ups on my first workout. And then I
What a
did,
brutal first
right?
exercise to do. I mean, that would turn most people away, to be
And I
100%.
loved it.
Yeah.
Something about it was like, oh my God, that was the most different, difficult, cool. Everybody here is doing it. Like it was, there was so much of the CrossFit vibe about the community and the struggle and the shared experience and everything else about it. There's like, I
Hmm.
can't not do this.
Yeah.
So I called the program I had just joined like 2 or 3 weeks before. I was like, hey, I'm canceling. Can I get any of my money back? This would be
Hmm.
awesome, whatever. And
Yeah.
then I just joined the gym and that was it. Um, and yeah, so I mean, it's the most challenging thing that I've ever done that I love doing. I've never been one, when I was in the military, um, I was in the infantry for several years, and the epitome, the goal of a lot of people in infantry is, you want to go Ranger, you want to go Special Forces, you want to do all that, you want to grow and do more cool things, right?
Hmm.
And I was kind of like, infantry is good enough for me. I don't like working hard. I don't like walking 12 miles with a backpack on my back. I don't like getting up in the morning at 5 o'clock and going for a 5 mile run. This
Yeah.
sucks. Right. And, I did it because where I was at was what I felt like I needed to be doing, but I was never one to like want to go that extra mile. There was no motivation. I didn't have a reason. I didn't have a why. When I started CrossFit, that identity thing that we talked about at the beginning, like I needed to find something to make me be the person I wanted to be. And I felt like of all of the things I had tried, CrossFit was going to make me be the person I wanted to be. And because it was challenging, because it was varied, because it wasn't the same thing, it wasn't boring. I had a community of people who also were trying to become better people and be the person they wanted to be. Like so much about it was just like in alignment with where I was at.
Hmm.
And I've been there since then, right? I mean, that was 2010, 2011. It's 2025 and
Yeah.
we moved recently about a year and a half ago. I was kind of looking at different gyms. I just joined a CrossFit gym a couple months ago. Having a blast. I don't think I'm ever leaving it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's funny because I feel like you and I got into that same type of training methodology around the exact same time, which makes sense because that's when kind of CrossFit was blown up a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Um, in regards to nutrition, so obviously you were mentioning this earlier, the nutrition, the exercise part, it's a part of the puzzle, right? Was there some sort of catalyst that made you want to shift to more of like a meat-based diet, carnivore, ketogenic way of eating?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. The first most impactful aspect of why I made some changes was because I had health issues. I had IBS. I was notorious for being the guy you don't want to be stuck in a car with on
Hmm.
a long trip. Um, my life was ruled by where the bathroom was. How do I get there? Do I know where it is? It was one of those things where, and you may have heard me talk about this on other podcasts or before, but I lost 70 pounds in my journey,
Hmm.
but I didn't lose 100, 150, 200, 300 pounds like I've seen or worked with other people who've lost significant amount of weight. But the weight of the anxiety that was bearing down on me every single day about my inability. This is where it comes back to freedom. My
Hmm.
inability or the confidence I didn't have in my ability to control my bowels
Hmm.
was so stifling. I couldn't say yes to things because if someone said, hey, do you want to go on a hike? It was like, is there a bathroom at the beginning at the trailhead? Is there stops on the way? How long are we going to be gone? I can't eat the day before. If we're going hiking in the morning, I'm going to not eat dinner the night before, right? Make sure that I'm evacuated before.
Yeah.
Um, if we're going on a trip, how long are we going to be in the car? Are we stopping along the way? I'm not driving in a bus that doesn't have a bathroom in the back. I'm not driving on a bus or a van with 10, 15, 20 people if we don't have regular stops along the way. Um, even today, because it's become such a habit, I don't drive with other people. If there's 20 of us getting together and we're going to meet somewhere, I'm driving. Because for so many years, for years of my life, if I had to stop and rely on someone else or ask someone else to make an accommodation for me because I had to stop at a gas station on the way or on the side of the road or whatever it may be, it was always a problem, right? So that there's so many things about that if anybody can relate to that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So that was really one of the biggest impetus for me to say, hey, something needs to change. And I had tried everything. I had gone from, you know, my regular nutrient intake, if you want to call it that, being pizza and pad thai and French fries and burgers and that kind of stuff and donuts and coffee. That was my normal. Then I went from that to working into all whole foods, but still a lot of veggies. Meat, yes, but primarily veggies, a lot of greens, a lot of sweet potatoes. And I still having problems. Like, look, I'm eating, you know, I was married to a registered dietitian at the time I made this change. And, you know, I was doing everything she told me to do. And it's interesting. I was literally just reading an article today about how the American Dietetics Association that registers RDs, right? That's the epitome of nutrition education in the country. Is actually bought out by big pharma, by big food and all these things, and it makes sense, right? Here I am married to an RD at the time, doing everything that she was telling me to do, and nothing was changing.
Yeah.
Right? I could get lean, but my IBS didn't go away. I was still crapping myself all the time, right? And then I got weak. Every time I leaned out, all my lifts, all my exercise, everything that I did went in the crapper. And then, okay, well, I need to get strong again. I need to get better. I need to improve my performance. Okay, great. Now I'm fat. Right. And I'm still pooping everywhere. I'm still I still have all these IBS issues. And it was just such an annoying, frustrating process of back and forth and up and down. And I couldn't figure it out. And she's actually the one who came to me one day and said, hey, well, she said, have you heard about this carnivore thing? And I was like, no. And so she's the one that sent me the link to Joe Rogan, Sean Baker.
Yeah.
In like 2017, 2018, whenever that was. And I watched it and I was like, this is very interesting. And I spent I spent a few weeks kind of looking into it, trying to find what I could. And there wasn't much at the time, like that video. And there was like maybe 2 or 3 blogs that were out there about, you know, people doing it. And I decided, okay, I'll try it. And the idea was elimination diet. See if cutting all this stuff out helps my gut, helps my bowels, helps my IBS, and then see where we go from there. That was 2018. I haven't gone back.
So,
right. I mean, it fixed it and more things than I ever could have possibly imagined.
So that's really funny because I was going to ask you about that because, you know, my wife at one point, she was a nutritional therapy practitioner. And it's really funny because we have completely different philosophies on diet. But I was going to ask you, like, you know, when you were going over to Carnivore, what did your wife think about it? But it turns out she was the one that actually, you know, turned you onto it.
It's funny you say that because I was actually just thinking about writing a blog about this after reading this article.
Yeah.
Because I think people need to understand that registered dietitians are not trained on how to make people healthy. They're not. And this is a conversation that maybe we can get into on another talk or something, but the ACM, or I forget what it is, American Dietetics, that organization, they are a lobbyist. They're a lobby for big food. I mean, they promote and they are paid for, and all their information and education is about perpetuating things that improve big food's bottom line. So if you look at a registered dietitian, they are contractually obligated to say certain things. And if you're an RD and you go against that, you can be attacked. You can be, I mean, it's not a good thing, right? So that's why there's people that are out there doing it. Like if you look at Michelle Hearn, if you look at, I don't know if you're familiar with Temple Stewart, registered dietitians who are saying, look, everything I've been taught is wrong. This is what you need to be doing instead. but they're RDs and they've been on both sides and they understand the side that actually makes an impact and helps. And it's not the RD side, right? They're putting
Yeah.
themselves out there at risk, going against the contracts that they've signed as an RD to say, look, guys, I'm trying to help people. I don't care about that. And I'm going to tell you everything that's opposite what an RD says. So yes, she brought it to me. It was supposed to be a short-term thing. That is not my mentality when I see something that works. So it backfired on her, and I guess you could say on us, because it was me going carnivore, loving it, seeing what it did, being an engineer and an analyst by trade, digging into understanding why it works, trying to understand how all of the things I had ever been taught were completely thrown on their head by this new diet, and why. It was probably, of the couple of things that we were dealing with in our relationship at the time, it was one of the top two things of why we got divorced.
That's
Because
interesting.
I decided to buy into the low carb carnivore lifestyle. I owned a CrossFit gym at the time. It became part of our protocol. It became part of our method, right? It completely disrupted and played a lot into a lot of things that happened in my life in between 2019 and 2022 to 21, not even talking about COVID, right? I lost members at my gym. My wife and I, like this at the time, because everything she had been taught was different than everything I was learning and experiencing firsthand. And then it got into well, you know more than me now. You think you know more than me. I'm the one that has the master's degree, blah, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, I can't, this is what's in front of me. This is what I see working. What do you want me to do? Right. So it was not a really, it was a contentious topic and process. Yeah, for sure.
I can totally relate to that situation, going back. And yeah, I'll just say in terms of how my wife looks at things and how I look at things, you let's just say it keeps the marriage spicy. That let's just say that. But you mentioned something earlier about kind of taking that way of eating and then incorporating it into the gym and with clients. So, and I kind of wanted to touch on this
Sure.
because I think a lot of people will potentially look at keto, definitely carnivore, as maybe a little bit more of an extreme diet, but I think it's because they might not have the basic understandings of the whys and the hows. So, and I know when I'm about to ask this, like everyone is a little bit different, obviously. When you were consulting with someone and you were implementing carnivore or keto or like a meat-based approach into the gym and with clients, let's just say someone was just starting out. Let's say they're a new member. They're maybe a little bit they're overweight, they're out of shape, whatever the case
Sure.
is. How did you transition someone into like a carnivore
Sure.
ketogenic type of diet? Like, did you typically start off with maybe like shifting them to like a general low carb approach first and then maybe phase out some of the junk and the excess carbohydrates and the
Yeah.
processed foods? Or did you just jump right in? Like, how did you approach that?
So there's two different answers for that. There's the how I did it when I first started doing it, and there's the how I would do it now.
Got it. Okay.
Right. So when I first started doing it, just like you probably were when you first started doing CrossFit or I first started doing CrossFit, it's the best thing for everybody. Everyone needs to do it, and everyone needs to do it as hard as possible.
Yeah.
Right. That was how I got started. And that my, owning my role in all of the contention in my life and whatever else, that's how I approach things. Right. So it was a overnight switch essentially for a lot of people to be like, okay, now Bronson's shoving this carnivore thing down everybody's throat. What the hell is going on? Right. So that was, that's on me. But from a methodology perspective, now having 7 years of experience doing it and working with people and figuring out, hey, wait a second, carnivore is great, but why is carnivore great? And this is the point that I'm really focusing in on now. And this is where my last two books really focused. Um, what are the concepts and principles behind a carnivore diet that make it work? And that's the focus, not carnivore, not keto. Just like vegan doesn't work, but there are principles about it that make it work for a while.
Sure.
So what are those principles? And the cool thing about the principles is that regardless of what diet you do, you can follow the principles to some level and see success. So the principles have to do with things like eating whole food, getting enough protein, incorporating other things that don't have anything to do with nutrition, right? Are you sleeping well? Are you managing stress? There's so much to it. So the way I look at it now, when I'm looking at a nutrition intervention, is I'm never looking at just a nutrition intervention, because it's never just nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be three components. There's something we can do to improve your fitness. There's something we can do to improve your nutrition. And there's something we can do to help you get your mind right about where you're going and how to get there. So when I'm working with a client now, after I've had the experience that I have and have brought these things together, it's something small. My favorite phrase is a minimum effective dose.
Totally.
What is the lowest hanging fruit for those three areas that we can help you do something with every day that's going to move you forward? When that becomes the norm, then we can add to it. So the idea is, how do we make small steps outside your comfort zone without overwhelming you? The process should not be stressful. The process should not add more complexity to your life. The whole idea is to make your life better, not more stressful. So that's how I look at it now is, okay, if you're getting 50 grams of protein a day, that should probably be a priority of increasing your protein versus I want you to cut out all your carbs and eat a ribeye for 3 meals a day. Like, that's not realistic, right? What is something that we can say, hey, maybe instead of just eating 1 egg for breakfast, you eat 2. Maybe instead of just eating 3 ounces of tuna fish for lunch, you eat 6.
Totally.
Right. So I like to do things where when it comes to protein, we'll just stay with that one. My best approach, one of my methods of helping people do that is just simply double what you're doing now. So again, literally, if you're eating 1 egg a day for breakfast, just eat 2. Whatever you have for protein in a meal, if you need to increase your protein, just double what you have in that meal and eat it first. Right? That's a simple, you don't have to track, you don't have to like figure out how many grams, like all that other kind of stuff. And all that stuff has its place. But when someone's really metabolically sick, dysfunctional, obese, overweight, limited, struggling with understanding what do I do, that's a real easy way to do that. There's some people who start carnivore, and this is a very popular thing. Just stop eating the processed food and eat meat until you're full. That's a super way to start as well, right? It may be extreme for some people because just stopping eating processed food can be a real challenge for some people. But at the same time, if you're eating till you're full and you're just eating meat and eggs, then you might not want those other things. So everyone, again, like you said before, everyone's different, and understanding like what is the thing that is 2 things. What can you do? Well, it's more than that. What can you do? What are you willing to do? And what will you do consistently?
Yeah,
That's the thing that you start with.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Stan Efferding quote that I like a lot. Like, the best diet is like the one you'll stick to. The best exercise program is the one you do. But I think, no, going back to what you were saying in terms of the best way to start off for anybody is to slowly just start prioritizing protein more, and then working your way from there. It's a great way to kind of introduce someone to a better way to start off eating than to focus on something else.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
just cutting out crap. Like, don't change anything about how much you're eating of whatever. Just stop eating anything that has a label.
100%.
Right. That's a way to go as well. Or just, maybe you stop drinking 3 Cokes every day. Like there's something little. And here's the trick. If for anybody listening that's trying to figure out how do I know what to do, you already know what to do. Everybody knows there's 1, 2, 3, or 4 things in your life right now that if you stopped, you would be healthier.
Totally.
We already know what they are.
Yeah.
So you don't need a coach. You don't need a program. You already know what it is that you can either stop doing or start doing, right? Maybe it's stopping the milkshake at lunch every day. Maybe it's not getting 3 Boston cream donuts with your coffee at Dunkin' Donuts every day, right? And I'm
Yeah.
speaking from experience there, right? Maybe it's just eating more protein. Maybe it's, hey, you know what? I need to drink more water. Something. There's something in your life that you know you need to do. You already know.
Totally, 100% agree with that. And then that kind of makes me want to shift in towards what, like, okay, so let's say we're dealing with maybe not like an athlete, but as someone starts to progress, whether and then when it's their diet or whether it's with their training.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on like total grams of protein per day, like based off women? Like I know we hear different things like, you've got like Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, which I'm a fan of. She typically recommends, like, I believe it's a gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight.
Mhm.
I'm curious to see what your thoughts are, because then sometimes people will start getting into like, oh, what about gout? What about all these other issues and kidneys with excess protein? I'm curious to see like maybe what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. Number one, no one, unless you have a history of kidney issues, and even then, excess protein has been shown to improve kidney function. So I would say take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Um, no one has to worry about too much protein ever. Your body needs it. It will use it. And actually, just last year, it might have been 2023, I think, there was a study that came out that completely blows away all of which we already knew, right? I've been talking about this for 7 years,
Yeah.
that there's no upper limit on protein intake. But there's a study that came out, I believe in 2023, that basically said you could have 100 grams of protein per meal and you're going to be fine. Your body will use it. It correlates with a rate matched increase in muscle protein synthesis. So 30 grams of protein in a meal will stimulate muscle protein synthesis, and 100 grams of protein in a meal will stimulate muscle protein synthesis at the rate of 100 grams, not 330, right? So, and it lasts for longer. So eat all the protein, guys. Like
Yeah.
your body's going to use it.
Totally. And
Not going to oxidate it. It's not going to turn to chocolate cake in your blood. Just eat it, right?
yeah. And
Um,
so which is crazy about that, because I think a lot of people there's also these other like myths online that will say like your body can only take in so many grams of protein. But like if you think about, so you only need to eat 30 to 50 because your body cannot digest any more than that. But when you think about it, I know when you think about it, okay, well let's say you're eating a couple of donuts that have 100 grams of carbs or 100 grams of sugar. Don't you think your body's going to utilize all of it? Is it only like if you eat a donut, right? Is it really going to just maybe use 50 grams and then it's going to like disregard the rest? No, your body's going to suck up all that sugar. It's the same thing with protein.
mhm. Well, it's the same but different, because the cool thing about protein, and this is one of the things that blew everything I knew about nutrition out of the water when I
Yeah.
first got started, is I realized one day I was reading something, I forget what I was reading about protein, and something clicked. And I was like, hey, wait a second. How do we have this whole debate in the space about net carbs versus total carbs? And I dug into that a little bit. I said, wait a second. So some fibers, air quotes, are
Mm-hmm.
insoluble, which means your body doesn't process them. So we don't count the calories, which is a whole nother conversation.
Sure.
So if we're not counting those as energy because they're not used as energy, they just pass through the system, then that means some of the things we eat are treated differently in our body than other things that we eat. So then when I'm eating protein and it's used for muscle protein synthesis, it's not being used for energy, which means the calories from protein don't count towards my daily calorie intake because it's not being used for, like, I went down this whole rabbit hole, and there's like, wait a second, protein is not used for energy like carbs and fat are. It's used for function. It's used to build and repair, and protein is metabolic machinery.
Mm-hmm.
It is not the gas tank.
Totally.
So when I'm eating all of this protein, all I'm doing is supporting the mechanisms of my body. And that like just totally blew everything I knew. And it's another reason why I'm so against calories. There's so many, again, we could do a whole 2 hours on calories. Um, but yeah, so that is kind of the thing about protein that people need to understand is when you're eating protein, you are supporting your metabolism. And we're not talking about energy when I say
Mm-hmm.
metabolism. Metabolism is all of the functions in your body that keep you alive. It is all of the cellular, chemical, and biological interactions and mechanisms of your blood pumping, your cardiovascular system, your immune system, your central nervous system, your musculoskeletal system, all of the functions of your body that keep you running are supported by amino acids. So, and none of that has anything to do with energy. So, just something to think about there. The other aspect. So, there's number one, there's no upper limit of protein. Don't be afraid of protein. You need as
Mm-hmm.
much as you can get. Number two, anyone who gives you a guideline that says you should be getting a certain amount is missing half the story. The other half of the story, because I have a guideline, here's where I like people to start. And that's the other half of the story. You have to adjust based on what you're trying to do and based on where you are and based on where you're going.
Totally.
So anyone who gives you a guideline, they're not telling you what you should be getting. They may think that's what they're telling you, but the way you need to look at it is, I'm going to start here and see how it works. Maybe I need more, maybe I can use less,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I like to start people off at 1 gram per pound of lean mass. So I'm at about 185, 190 right now. I have 165 pounds of lean mass. So I shoot for 165 grams of protein per day. That's my goal.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm there, sometimes I'm at 200, sometimes I'm at 140, right?
Same.
But I average about 165. And that works for me. I'm able to continue progressing in the gym. I don't have any discomfort, right, in eating too much protein in a meal. That may be the only side effect that people have from eating too much protein. If you're eating too much lean protein specifically, another discussion we can talk about lean versus fatty meats, things like that. But yeah, understanding that in the process of following guidelines, whether it's macros, whether it's how much sodium you should have every day, how many glasses of water to drink every day, any of that stuff, it's a starting point for your experimentation process. You have to track it. You have to see what it does for you and if it's working or not, or if you need to increase or decrease along the way. So that's where that goes. All of my guidelines are starting points for people, and then we make adjustments based on how their results. Your results are the only thing that matter, guys.
So that brings me to, since we're talking about calories here and energy and protein, that brings me to the one area which I think we might differ on, but I'm actually excited to chat about this with
Yeah.
you. Thoughts on fasting?
So, okay. We talked off air at the beginning that everything
Mm-hmm.
is a tool.
Sure.
And I have used types of fasts with clients in the past. I do not usually start there,
Mm.
and it is not something that is in my top 5 options for most people. Because here's the thing, the way that I look at it, the struggles that most people have is consistency and their body's inability to maintain homeostasis because they've been so up and down and inconsistent with the things that they're doing. Introducing fasting on purpose, I think, perpetuates that issue. So the way that I look at fasting, particularly if someone is trying to adapt and move into a ketogenic lifestyle, is that by going keto, by moving into a ketogenic adaptation in their metabolic function, they are gaining the benefits of fasting without having to fast. A ketogenic diet, by definition, is a fasting mimicking diet.
Yeah.
So there is not a single benefit of fasting that is not achieved through a keto diet and physical exercise. Not a
And
one.
so when you say fasting mimicking, just to maybe help people understand that, because the way I know fasting mimicking is essentially fasting, like a fasting mimicking diet protocol is basically keeping the calories maybe around, and I know we're not big fans of calories here,
Yeah.
but like keeping the calories, air quote, at a certain level or below a certain level, let's say 500 or 600 calories a day. So day over day over day, and that mimics like what you would benefit from a fast. But if you're eating enough high nutrient foods, for instance, meat, protein with a good amount of fat percentage in it, the calories are not going to be as high, right, as they would be with maybe the standard American diet where the calories and the excess carbohydrates are at certain levels. So basically just switching to a meat-based diet and a high protein diet and with high enough fat, the calories are going to be at a certain point where they're already going to be essentially lower, and that will mimic what the body does through a fast. Am I kind of on track there or no?
Nope. And I think that's a common misconception of what people think about it, and which is why I talk about it like this. A fasting mimicking diet is a diet that allows adequate nutrition while getting the benefits on the metabolic function side of things that fasting gives.
Got
So
it.
the metabolic benefits of fasting, things like autophagy, mitogenesis, my apoptosis, all of the different things that are functions of how our body works that are improved when we fast, right? Your body gets that by adapting to fat and ketones without having to reduce your nutrient intake,
Got
right?
it.
So it's not a reduction in calories because calories have zero impact on metabolic function. Calories can't improve mitochondrial performance. Calories can't improve autophagy. Calories can't improve immune function, reduce inflammation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Going to a diet where you are primarily oxidizing fat reduces inflammation.
Mhm.
Having ketones improves brain function, improves body fat, improves lipolysis, the breakdown of adipose tissue. It improves the preservation of proteins and amino acids in muscle. Like those are the changes in the metabolic function of the human body that you get from keto that match the benefits of actually restricting food.
Got it.
So that's where fasting mimicking is you can intake everything that your body needs to function. You don't have to starve yourself
Yeah,
in order to get the benefits of fasting.
totally.
And
That
that's
makes
where it helps with the consistency aspect because I don't have to tell people eat Monday and Tuesday, fast on Wednesday, eat Thursday, Friday. Like you don't have to change your schedule. You don't have to just eat the same thing every day, the same amount, and you're going to get the benefits because you're changing how your body works, right? With that intake.
that makes
That's the
complete
difference.
sense.
Yeah.
That makes complete sense. In terms of, let's say, like switching gears to like more workout related stuff, because I heard you talk about this on a podcast and it caught my ear and I thought it was really interesting. Targeted inefficiencies. So
Oh wow, you pulled that one out. I haven't said that in a while. Okay.
yeah, and well, it caught my ear because the way I translated that, and I think this, and the reason why I wanted to bring this up because I so I translated this into working on your basic weaknesses to help improve other areas as well. That's how I translated it. You could have meant something completely different, but what did you mean by that?
I've got to pull that back out because I haven't used that. I haven't talked about that in so long. I got to remember what the hell was I talking
Sure.
about. um, so along those lines, I think targeted inefficiencies are very much. I think it's what you said, right? There's never going to be something that we are 100% good at.
Hmm.
I've been doing CrossFit for 14 years. Holy crap. Jeez, man, time flies.
Yeah.
Um, wow, that just blew my mind. I've never actually said the total number of years. That's crazy, man. Um, and there are things that the only way I'm going to get better is by doing things wrong until I figure out how to do them right. right? So there are
Totally.
things that, I have to, like, what's an example? Let's say I'm doing a power clean and I'm catching the bar, I'm pulling up, I'm catching the bar on the front rack. And every time I do it, I'm pushing through my knees. I'm not putting my hips back in the catch,
Mm-hmm.
right? That is something that I have to practice what I'm inefficient at. I have to target that inefficiency, which means the weight has to go down. I have to go slower. I can't, right? And I'm sure you've seen this. I see this all the time. I get someone that comes in the gym or I get a client. They're like, I'm a 500-pound squatter. Okay, great. But I've been at 500 pounds for a year and a half and I can't get higher.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's look at what you're doing. Oh, well, you're not doing this. You're not doing that. Your stance is too close. You got this bar. There's something about the way you're executing the movement that is limiting your function, limiting your ability to progress. So in order to fix that, we have to reduce the stress, reduce the stimulus, go back to some basics. And you're going to reduce your performance in order to improve your performance.
Totally. And it brings me back. I'm getting flashbacks of training clients back in Las Vegas. And the movement that comes to mind is overhead squats,
Oh,
especially
100%.
especially
Yeah.
especially for men. And programming workouts, this was like right when I first started. I mean, I just remember doing, what was it? I believe it's Karen. What is it? It's like 5 rounds, run 400 meters, 15 overhead squats, and everyone was doing, like, all the guys were doing 95 pounds. I could not overhead squat. I could barely overhead squat the barbell, and I was trying to throw up 95 pounds and squat it 15 times and then go on a
Right.
run and come back.
Yeah.
And as I progressed in CrossFit and I got certified, I was like, okay, well, I need to be able to teach a snatch. I need to be able to teach like a squat, snatch, and overhead and overhead squats.
Mhm.
So, and I remember like just doing this with myself, going all the way back to like the basics and using a broomstick, then using a woman's barbell, slow overhead squats, getting my body used to sitting in the bottom of this overhead squat, opening up the shoulder capsule a little bit, and then slowly start progressing up. But then in 6 months, I was able to snatch like 185 pounds. So it's like taking the movement all the way down to the basics and then slowly building up and getting your entire body used to that motor recruitment and that motor pattern.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And it's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
I'm kind of doing a little bit of that right now in just overall stuff because like I said, I joined a CrossFit gym recently. I sold my gym in 2019, then we had the whole COVID thing. And I was like, you know what, I'm taking a little break. I took a couple of years where I just dabbled in a bunch of different things. And then I was like, okay, it's time to get back into a gym and start doing some stuff.
Hmm.
I'm out of shape. I got
Yeah.
back in, we're doing these workouts. I'm like, holy crap. Now, the very interesting thing about this, a little segue, is here I am, 52 years old. I'm getting back into a CrossFit gym. The gym that I joined produces games athletes. Like you go look in the wall and there's just a
Yeah.
wall full of game plaques, right? Everybody here goes to the games. And, I'm in these classes with people that are going to the games. Just yesterday, we had, a bunch of people in the gym doing the semifinals for this year's games, getting ready to go. And here I am doing these workouts. I haven't been doing CrossFit workouts for a couple of years and I'm sucking. Here's the deal. I'm sucking for what I have in my head that I should be doing.
Hmm.
I'm sucking compared to these 25-year-olds who are going to the games, but I'm still doing things at a level that puts me in the 1%, right? I don't have any movement limitations. I can do all the exercises. I can do whatever I need to do in the workout. I'm doing everything RX, right? I'm just slower than I used to be. But my slower than I used to be is still at a level of physical competence and performance that 99% of the world can't attain.
Totally.
And I have to remind myself that me compared to where I was in my 40s isn't going to be the same as in my 50s. And it isn't going to be the same when I've taken 2 or 3 years off of doing this stuff. Right. So
Hmm.
I have to work myself back into a level that, where I want to be. But that perspective is really important, that your ability to do things is more important than anyone else around you.
100%.
Right. And so that's where the frustration of people dealing with, well, I used to be able to do this, or, How come I have to drop the weight to do this better? If I can bench 300 pounds, but I'm having shoulder pain every time I bench, well, maybe you need to stop benching 300 pounds, learn how to bench properly with 100 pounds, and then work yourself back up. Right? That's a process. We have to understand that if we're trying to get better, we can't look at what's around us. We got to focus on where we are.
100%. And that brings up another thing I actually wanted to talk to you about, because injuries, right? They're going to happen, whether it's with yourself or whether it's with your clients, or you're slowly starting to ramp up the weight, the workout intensity. Like, they're going to happen when let's say you or even a client is injured. And obviously every injury is a little bit different here, right? A broken back is different than a sprained ankle. What are your thoughts in terms of, like, what do you typically prescribe? Is it like, hey, let's lay off the gym, completely do nothing? Or is it like, hey, let's work around this, but we need to keep moving? I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on that, because a lot of people reach out to me and say, oh, I've got Achilles tendonitis, I've got this, that. And what I usually say is, don't stop moving, just work around it, do whatever you can. I'm curious to see what your thoughts on that, especially as, we're getting older, and, we're trying to sometimes work out like a young buck. But going back to what you're saying, like, we're not going to work out like you did in your 40s as you do now. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, again, going back to the same reason I don't like to recommend fasting, I think consistency is the most important thing. So maintaining the habit regardless of the situation is primary, right? That's got to be at top of mind. So even if you're injured, there's something you can do. And the first question is, the first challenge that a lot of people get into when they get injured is the first thing they start thinking about is what I can't do anymore.
Totally.
Don't do that. What can you do? I sprained my foot. Okay, great. What can you do? I can sit in a chair and I can do chair good mornings. I can do all sorts of upper body stuff. I can do core work. There's plenty of things that you can do with whatever injury you have within the realm of what your PT or doctor or whatever has said is good. Don't do this, don't do that. That's great. What can I do? If you ask yourself that question, it will open up opportunities for you to maintain the habit and prioritize your fitness. So it's just like, if you have a job and something happens, the first thought that you have isn't, well, I'm not going to work today, because you have to go to work. If you want that paycheck, you're going to work.
Good way to look at it.
The mindset when it comes to the job is, how do I get to work? If your car breaks down, how do I get to work? I have to get to work. How am I going to get to work? The fitness should be the same way. If something is a challenge or a roadblock or an obstacle that comes in your way, you have to be like, how am I getting to the gym? How am I going to maintain this habit? Because the income that you get from your health perspective is worth it.
That makes complete sense. And also too, like, I feel like, find something that you can do, but also like blood flow, circulation, those things help to increase healing, right? I think, like,
sure,
laying
absolutely.
up on the couch is never really like the best way to go. You got to do something. The more things that you can do, what you'll find is you'll probably recover from the injury just a little bit faster, because you'll have more circulation throughout the body.
Absolutely. Yep.
I know we're coming up here on time. I did want to shift back to the diet stuff real quick, because I think a lot of listeners would be interested in this. In terms of meat quality, food quality, right? What are your thoughts on the organic, free range, pasture raised, grass fed products? Like, should people who want to transition to a little bit more of like an animal based diet get hung up on these things? And is it more important to make the fundamental diet shifts first, like getting a lot of the processed foods out? Like, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah. Whatever is going to make the changes sustainable and consistent is what matters. So if you are worried, if you're worried about the quality of the meat that you're going to get, and that's stopping you for whatever reason. I heard that I have to get grass finished, grass fed, blah, blah, blah. It's too expensive, so I'm not going to do anything. That doesn't make sense. or I need to get, free range pasture raised eggs and I can't find them anymore. My store's out. So I'm just not going to do that. Doesn't make any sense. It's the mindset of all or nothing, or, I blew one tire, so I'm going to pop the other three. And that just doesn't move you forward. So
That's a
the
good way to look
minimum
at it.
effective dose is, if you're going to go animal based, whatever meat you can get, that's what you get. Guys, when I started carnivore, the meat that I ate, I decided on the last day of April 2018, I said, tomorrow morning I'm going carnivore. So May 1st, 2018, whatever meat we had in the house was what I ate until it was gone. And then I just went out and got more, right? I didn't worry about where it was, or I like this kind of meat. I'm going to get it. I like bacon. I like sausage. I like pepperoni, right? I got all of the stuff. I used to do tons of processed meat, right? Kielbasa, Polish sausage, pepperoni. I'd tear that stuff up all the time. And I still do every once in a while. Um, but it's just whatever you can do, keep it simple. We get so hung up on doing things the way someone else says is how we should do it, as opposed to, again, what can I do to get the results that I need? It doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. The concepts of why do you want to go animal based? Why are you eating meat is more important than what type of meat you're eating. So yeah, I think whatever you can afford, whatever you have access to. I've seen people make dramatic changes in their health by eating the 10-pound or 5-pound tubes of ground beef from Walmart.
Totally.
Right? Get what you can get. You know what I mean?
That makes sense. What's next for you?
Oh gosh. Oh boy, there's so many things on my on my to-do list. I have no idea where to even start. I'm in the process right now. I'm finishing up my master's degree in exercise science and nutrition. I've applied to a couple different doctorate programs, so that should hopefully I get accepted into one of them and can get that started sometime at the end of this year. I've got about 5 books that are on my list of things to do. Whenever that happens, I'll be writing books till the day I die, probably. Business wise, projects, services, things like that I offer. I don't really offer much right now because I've been so focused on schooling and that kind of stuff. But I do have a couple projects. I've got some papers I'm working on, and I'm looking at kind of maybe switching to working more with veterans and trying to see how to get veterans. There's a big, oh gosh. So as a veteran, I spent 17 years in the military. There are a lot of veterans out there who are dealing with a lot of health issues. And if anybody is anywhere, at any level cognizant of how poorly the Veterans Administration health system works, then you know that most of them are not getting the help that they need. They're not getting the information that's going to actually help them. They're not getting the support. They're not getting the interventions. And there's a huge gap in the impact that not gap. There's a huge opportunity of the impact I think I could have on helping veterans improve their quality of life. Um, you know, they've spent years serving in the military, fighting for freedom, doing the things that they felt they had an obligation to do for the country and for the citizens of the country. And I think they deserve to have their freedoms from a physical perspective, from a fitness perspective, and a health perspective. So that's kind of where I'm thinking things are going to be focused in the near future.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Bronson, I want to be respectful of your time. This was fantastic. I'd love to have you on again for
Sure.
sure.
We can
Yeah.
talk, whatever. Like if you, I don't know where you're going with this, but dude, I love this kind of stuff. So if I had enough people who would be willing to talk like every day, I just got to get on and just talk every day about stuff. So I'm down for whatever.
Yeah. 100%. Where can people find you online? Where can people get your books? How can someone work with you?
Yeah. So just look up Coach Bronson on the Googles, and all my stuff comes up. So it's coach.bronson on all the social media. All my books are on Amazon. My website is coachbronson.com. YouTube is out there. It's all just Coach Bronson should bring all my stuff up.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks guys for listening to the Low Carb Consulting Podcast. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Hi guys, thanks for listening to this episode of the Low Carb Consultant Podcast with Coach Bronson. I'll see you next time.